that we can talk about, or no?
This is our table. We can talk about whatever we want to talk about. Exactly.
We actually did build this table, so let's talk about it.
The guy down the street, but.
Hamadakyapi, Nick Tilsen, Amachapi, Chantea Washtena Petchuzapalo. My name is Nick Tilsen, and I'm your host here for the Landback for the People podcast. I'm Oglala Lakota and come from the lands of the Oshetishakoi. As a father of four and the son of both Joanne Tall, Janice, and my father, Mark Tilsen, I was raised up in the movement. I was raised up in the American Indian movement. My parents, met. They actually first met at the occupation of Wounded Knee in 1973, where our people and family came together and in resistance and in unity to continue to build the Indigenous people's movement. And so this podcast, it's an opportunity for me to share about this journey and continuing to build the Landback movement to uplift the voices of our people and our people's struggle and the things that we are fighting for. And it's an honor to be here and to be a part of this process. And this podcast is coming from the lands of the Oshetishakoi right here in Mini Luzaha, also known as Rapid City, in the Hesapa, also known as the Black Hills. And as we talk and continue to uplift the voices of the things that are happening throughout the Indigenous world, we're going to be talking about things not just from a local perspective, but what is happening throughout the Indigenous movement. In this episode, we're going to talk about the cross intersection of racism and Landback. As you all may or may not know, Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution states that treaties are the supreme law of the land. Therefore, in the process of building America, every single treaty that was ever made with Indian people was violated. Therefore, every treaty violation was in fact a constitutional violation of the United States Constitution that some will argue is the very foundation for the so-called democracy that we live in today. And so this podcast and this episode will get into the cross intersections of institutional racism, of white supremacy and Landback, and how that plays out in our communities. Because you can sit back and you can say, did this happen a long time ago? Well, they lost the Indian Wars and the Indians lost their land, and therefore they should just accept that. Well, the reality is when we think about the future of our people and we think about the healing, we think about a reckoning of racial justice in this country, we're not just going to accept that. In fact, Indigenous people all throughout Turtle Island have been rising up, fighting for Landback, calling out institutional racism because of what we see every day happening in our communities. But what's happening in our communities is a symptom of institutionalized racism, is a system of white supremacy. It's not just a collection of behaviors. For example, right here in South Dakota where this podcast is being recorded, we make up less than 10% of the population in the state of South Dakota, but are comprised up of 51% of the people that are incarcerated. That makes South Dakota and the Indigenous population here ground zero for over-incarceration of Indigenous people in the nation. On a national scale, for every $1 that a white person has, a Native person has 8 cents. That represents a 92% racial wealth gap. In a country that became the richest country in the world, it became one of the most powerful countries in the world. And that would have not been possible hadn't it been for the stealing of Indigenous people's land. As you break this down of what's happening to Indigenous people in these communities, everything that I'm saying to you from the front line out here in Mini Luzaha or in the Hesapa, we know to be true throughout Indigenous communities, throughout America, throughout the Western Hemisphere. We are all experiencing racial injustices and the impacts of colonization and the impacts of our land and our economic and our social and cultural systems being stolen from us. Indigenous people in South Dakota, and Western South Dakota specifically, have the lowest life expectancy than anybody in the Western Hemisphere, with the exception of Haiti. You're seeing third world poverty conditions, both in urban and rural places. You're seeing violence being committed against Indigenous people 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10 times at the rate of white people. And all of these things are symptoms of systematic racism. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the cross-intersection of racism, white supremacy, and Landback. And we're here with some amazing organizers who are organizing on the front lines right here in Mini Luzaha. And I'm going to give each and every one of them the opportunity to introduce themselves. We'll start off with Sunny.
Hi, my name is Sunny Red Bear. I'm Minikoshu and Hunkpapa Lakota from the Cheyenne River tribe. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a local organizer for the Indian Actions team.
Hello, Hermus Bellion. I'm a local organizer here for NDN Action, and I'm Oglala Lakota.
Hi, thank you for having us. My name is Anissa Martin, Oglala Lakota. I'm from Pine Ridge. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a part of the Indian Action organizing team here in Rapid City.
So that means we got 2 Oglalas and 1 Mini Koju and part Hunkpapa. So
it's powerful.
Powerful crew. A couple more, we would have had the whole Osheti Shakoi here. Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution states that treaties are the supreme law of the land. And every treaty that was ever made with Indian people was broken. And therefore, every single treaty violation is in fact a constitutional violation. And in the process of eroding Indigenous people's rights and stealing Indigenous people's lands, they actually weakened this democracy. Mm. And now we're dealing with the impacts of that. We're dealing with the impacts of the injustice that happened as a result of the stealing of that of our people's land. And we continue to look at the impacts of that, like, for example, the racial wealth gap. We talk about for every $1 that a white person has in this country, a Native person has 8 cents. That represents a 92% racial wealth gap. How you see that play out in Rapid City was something that actually brought up last night at the mayoral candidate forum, and they were talking about the median income for single mothers in Rapid City is $24,000 a year, which means that they're living at or above or at or just below the poverty line. And so we see all the impacts of those things happening. And so when we think about the cross intersection of Landback and racism, my question is, and I'll start with Sunny, is when you think about racism and Landback, what do you think about? What do you think about the struggle of our people and the conditions that we live in, the racism that we struggle with every day, and this movement to reclaim our land and reclaim our power?
Yeah. I think when you ask that question, I think of in reverse. I think of what it would look like if we had land back, as looking at this in a way of like an asset perspective. So like we talk about our struggles and we talk about all these, the things that exist in our reality now, but like what could it be if we had land back? We obviously know the things that our people are experiencing, the things that we see every single day, the racism, the symptoms, of what happens when our land is taken. But my mind goes to what could it be? What can we create? And we've seen that, here with our local work of different examples of just exercising our own sovereignty, exercising our own self-governance. And so I can see a connection. I can see that healing that can take place. And so I think of that connection to land back, not as a disconnect anymore, but as a goal forward. So
I'll hop over to Anissa and hear, what do you think? What is the cross intersection that you're seeing between racism and Landback?
A thought that immediately pops in my head based off of what Sunny said was just the conversation that I had with some youth, and we talked about so when I work with the youth, I try to frame it in a what do you call it, in not a deficit-based thinking, trying to get out of that, but looking at the future in a positive way. So I asked the youth, I said, what would it look like if we had our land back? And the things that they said just blew my mind, because everything was beautiful. And, we lived in a community, and they described the Black Hills how they would see it if we got the land back. And not once did I hear any of them say anything about anything divisive. So I said, well, what would it look like with the people currently living in the Black Hills? And they said, well, we can figure out a way to make them become a part of the community, and whatever that may look like. And so I was for me, I was dang, I learned stuff from them too when I have these discussions with the youth. And because oftentimes I think we go back to okay, well, we'll make them leave, or we'll push them out. But then the youth were no, we can create a better way to live together and to live inclusively. And so for me, hearing them talk about it, it's almost if we were to get the land back, racism just kind of dissipates. And so I think, there's a direct correlation with racism and land back, because that's where it started here in this soil, was when they came here and they started dividing us. And so these conversations that I have with the youth, I learned so much from them. So that's what I took from it. And it helps me move in a better way when we deal with these things, and to look at it in a more powerful light, a more positive light.
Yeah, if only our whole society could be run by youth, we would be much further along. Next question, I'm going to direct this one over towards Brother Hermus over here. But I'll say this to everybody that's listening out there. The stories that you're gonna tell from here, we understand that racism is happening everywhere, and that Indigenous people all throughout Turtle Island are being impacted by racism. Whether you're in a small village in Mexico, whether you're in urban places, reservation communities, border towns, Indigenous people have been colonized in many different forms, in many different ways throughout Turtle Island, and now we're seeing that play out. My question to Hermus is, right here in Rapid City, you're always in the streets, you're patrolling, you're doing the work that you do. How do you see racism play out in this community? What are some of the experiences? What's happening here, right here in Minilusa,
Well, racism plays out a big part. The police are always, there's double standards here in Rapid City, and they're always holding our people more accountable to their laws than they do their own. It's sad to say, but then at the forum last night, when every one of the candidates last night talked about accountability, but whenever you ask them about that accountability, they just try to sugarcoat it, and it happens every day, and our people suffer from it, and they keep our land from us because they know that whenever we get our land back, or we are connected to our land, then they don't know how. There's no holding us back. We can get back on track on our own just by connection to the land, and by keeping the land from us, then they have no control over us.
Yeah, and just to put it in context for our listeners out there, here in Rapid City, Mini Luzahan, there's a election coming up, a mayoral election. I'm sure there's elections happening all across the country. What we were referencing was a mayoral candidate forum happening here in Rapid City that was open to the public, and the question was being asked about racism, and if only everybody could hear of those answers, you would know what we're up against. You don't want to hear. We had people tell us that racism didn't exist, that people don't see color. And everybody said the starting point is, well, we'll just listen. Well, maybe all those mayoral candidates should be listening to this show.
I even went as far as saying, well, I had my first girlfriend was an Indian.
Oh, yeah. My first girlfriend was a full-blooded Chumash Indian. Yeah. So jumping over to Sunny, just to lean into some of what's happening in this community, like what's happening in the schools here, like what's happening to the young people in the schools here in the community as far as racism.
Yeah, I mean, racism is showing up in all kinds of different ways, from just the everyday normal shopping at grocery stores all the way down to like the systems that we see, like with a lot of the work that like Hermus and our team has done on the ground. We've seen racism play out in our healthcare systems, in our school systems, and housing, in job employment, and we have, this isn't something like we just come up with. It's people are coming in to NDN to talk to us about these things. Like I say this all the time, is like NDN has become a safe space for our community. And when they come in, they feel safe to share their experiences of racism and discrimination. And we see and we hear the stories, and we see the pain and the heartbreak for their own kids, and for their family members, their relatives, the people that they've lost, the people that are missing, and just how they're trying to navigate life in a good way, and they just hit roadblock after roadblock of just like these very simplistic processes that should be easy. We see them just struggling to get through it because of that racism. And yeah, we do a lot of work with like the schools now. School is one of our focuses, and we just see that our children are being discriminated against. They're being racially profiled and criminalized within our schools. They're being searched. They're being breathalyzed, doing their breathalyzers. They're being accused and followed into bathrooms by, what are they called? SROs. But what does it stand for? School resource officers. Yeah, they're being followed into the bathrooms. And so it's just it's a lot of different things, and it's really heartbreaking because we're trying to educate our community and let them know and kind of bring them along with us in our education of this isn't just that person, this isn't just that SRO, this isn't just this incident, this is like systemic. And we're trying to get people to understand that although your emotion and your feeling and your experience, your lived experience is tied to this very specific event, like it's a larger thing that we have to address. And so like when we were talking and we were, listening to the forum last night, like they don't even get it. they are constantly talking about like Band-Aid solutions. And when we asked, well, not when we, but when our relative asked about racism, it was like they talk about accountability and they don't even know what that looks like for themselves. Like they don't even have a plan. They don't know what that could mean, what that looks like. And so they talked about like they would answer the question with literally questions.
Right.
They were like
over policing.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. So like it's just like a reverse, like just a lot of non-answers. And so yeah, we see it play out in all kinds of different ways. But I mean, we could go on forever about all the stories that we hear like every single day. And Hermus is like a really trusted relative in our community, and a lot of people go to him. And I don't want to speak for you, but like of all the things that you hear, like it's heavy, it's a lot. And like I really appreciate the work that you do, and maybe you can kind of share a little more about that.
Yeah, a lot of people come, and it's not just me. They bring it to me, and I have a good supporting cast right here, and like
wide receivers, running back, linemen.
Nine times out of 10, I'm not doing this work on my own. I automatically pick up the phone, call Sonny, call Nick, call Anissa. She never answers. but it's a lot of work, and it's taking that stand for the community is always something that we here at NDN kind of pride ourselves in, and we put the people first, and that's kind of what we do. And we'll drop everything and try to take care of the community first, and that's a big part of gaining the trust and moving forward, because without the trust of the community, I mean, all this fighting isn't going to do anything. It doesn't add up to anything. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. And we see all of this play out, and the reason why graduation rates for Native people are 50% lower. Mm-hmm. Somewhere between 50 and 60% lower than non-Native people in this community. So like when we think about how our people are experiencing racism, it shows up in the statistics. It shows up in the reality of the conversation. I mean, the Margaret Casey Foundation did a kids count, and the kids count was a study that was done by the Margaret Casey Foundation. And that kids count had to do with measuring the economic and education mobility of children in America. Meaning they're at this income level here. They're growing up in this income level here. Throughout their life, they'll have mobility of increasing that income. They're at this education level. They'll have this space of growing. In the Margaret Casey Kids Count study, it showed that Native American children in South Dakota have the lowest economic and education mobility than any child in America. And so all these experiences that we're talking about, the things that we've seen at the town hall, all these different experiences, they're showing up in the stats. Yeah. And the reality is the system continues to fund racism and continues to fund white supremacy. So it continues to be perpetuated. Yeah. So we're gonna shift to talking about some solutions next, and what we're doing right here in Rapid City, and talking about this narrative about Rapid City versus racism, what some of our goals are. But we'll take a short break before we do that.
Good day, relatives. The Collective Abundance Fund from NDN Collective supports Indigenous individuals and families redefine wealth on our terms. Awarded grantees will receive cash awards of $25,000 or $50,000, open to Indigenous peoples 18 years or older who reside in Minnesota, North Dakota, or South Dakota. The Collective Abundance Grant application period is open May 9th and closes July 11th. Register and apply early by visiting grants.ndncollective.org.
All right, so Rapid City versus racism. Like Rapid City taking on racism. Interesting approach, So why this framing, and why Rapid City versus racism? What are we trying to accomplish by that? We'll start off with Sunny.
Oh wow. So I always refer it back to when we had the boycott for the Grand Gateway Hotel. Little background: we filed a federal lawsuit against them. They were discriminating against Native people here in the Black Hills. And
wait, they were discriminating. What exactly did they do?
Oh my gosh, it's the whole thing. Well, the owner had said that they will no longer serve Native people. So they said this on Facebook. Me and Hermus went to go rent a room at the hotel following that statement, and we were denied a room. Mm-hmm. And so through that, it and she not only said it, but then they acted on that. And so there was a there, and we ended up filing a federal lawsuit. We're still in litigation with that, and so going through the process. It's been a year now, but it's again another one of the symptoms of the racism that exists here, that we experience daily. You know, we weren't the only ones that were discriminated against. We were not the only ones that were denied a room there, but also on a grander scale, like the Grand Gateway, they are a part of a larger system of racism that exists here in Rapid City.
Kind of like basically like it made it, because racism is so prevalent here. It's like no surprise. It made it okay for the Grand Gateway to be like, I can't tell the difference between the good Indians and the bad Indians, so I'm not going to serve any of them. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's exactly what she said. And yeah, it's a culture. It's a culture here. And but so following that, we decided that we wanted to make a statement. We wanted to ask the community to support us in boycotting the Grand Gateway Hotel. And we led a boycott for over 3 months, and it was honestly an amazing experience. It was a lot of work. We were out there countless hours every week. But one thing that we saw when cars were driving by, and it was on like one of the main roads right off the interstate, and it was during like tourist season. It was during like kind of springtime too. Yeah. Is we were ready for people to just like be throwing stuff at us, and like because we don't, as Native people, we experience racism so often that we were just ready for it. We were just ready for it. And one of the things that surprised us was that we had community members driving by, like honking in support. Like, we stand with you. People brought us water. People would bring us fruit and like just gifts, and like making sure we're okay and saying like, how can we help? And it was a really eye-opening experience for us to see that there are a lot of people in our community that want to stand against racism. And we wanted to create an opportunity for our community to do that. We realized that we cannot fight racism alone, just as Indigenous people, the ones that are experiencing it. We need everybody to take part and be a part of the solution. And so that's why we wanted to open it up to Rapid City versus racism, because it's going to take all of us. It's going to take the whole community to end it. So
yeah, I remember that. You've seen, there's something about like overt, blatant racism that brings the people up. Mm-hmm. I think that we experience, the racism all the time, getting gaslit, getting pulled over, getting harassed, not rented rooms for, all kinds of different things. But the overt racism seemed to bring our allies out too. And so, yeah, I think the framing Rapid City versus racism, like, absolutely creates an onboard, for that. And so, I wanted to go over to Hermus here to talk about something, in this fight. It can be draining. It can drain your energy. But also there can be moments of fighting for racism and standing up for Landback that feels empowering, that feels strong, that feels, liberating. I don't know if there's any story you want to share in this journey of doing this work where you really felt that was like something powerful.
I think what was really powerful is whenever everyone marched from down at Roosevelt Park up to the Grand Gateway, like Sunny said, we was expecting people to be fighting against what we're walking for and what we're standing for, and we've seen these the white community come, and I was like, here we go. And so we was all ready for like taking security measures and security precautions, but here to have all these people just join in with us and stand with us was really amazing. And it felt, hey, there's hope. Mm-hmm. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And that was a moment where I was like, this is gonna be this. It might take a while, but we're gonna win. Mm-hmm. We're gonna come out on top. Yeah. It might not be when we're alive, but hey, guess what? My kids have a chance.
There was a big shift that happened.
Yeah, it was a huge shift that took place, and I mean, there's still parts of the community that still exercise what they've been raised with, and these are learned behaviors. They're taught by their parents and their grandparents, and just passed down, and so it seems okay for them to do it. Yeah, so, but the other parts of the community want to change like we do, and all we're asking for is respect, just like everybody else. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like a wake up. I mean, I think that like a lot of the folks listening out there, this place is literally had laws in the books, as close as 4 or 5 years ago, where a group of Native people, 3 or more, was considered a war party, and should be made illegal if they're off the reservation. Those were like real laws, some that are still on the books to this day, about how Native people were treated in border towns, even though we're part of this, economic force. And so, this effort around Grand Gateway to file the civil rights lawsuit, but mobilize this community is a big deal for a place like Rapid City. It was like a wake up call, and just somebody who's been up here and been in this community and been a part of this community, and also recognizing that this is a regional town. So much of the economic engine behind this town comes because of the relationships of to the neighboring reservations and to the area ranches, and this town plays an economic part of the entire region, not just the folks that live here, and that's true for both Indians and non-Indians. So in your in some of your work here in the community, how is there a story that comes to mind of some of the work that you've done here that has felt liberating, or that you've seen people or young people speak truth to power, and you've seen it impact them in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, one just recently happened, and immediately it pops into my head, but is at one of the town halls that we hosted. And one of the first one that we had hosted, there was a family who came in, and it was the mom and the dad and then a young boy. And she comes in and, she's telling her son's story about being bullied in the Rapid City area school system, and how they grew up here in Rapid, and they've been putting up with it pretty much for his whole life. Mm-hmm. And he had long hair, but he came in and he sat, and you could tell, he was distraught. Like he was, there was something going on. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so he sat and he had his hood on, and his mom told his story, and just the things that she described that day, it hurt my heart. Yeah. Because she told about him going to school with his hair fixed in the morning, and then by the end of the day, his hair's messy and his hair's, in a bun. He goes to school with a braid, he comes back in a bun because people mess with his hair throughout the day. And so when he was there at the town hall, his hood was up and he was, just kind of sitting there, like closed. And so at the next town hall, his mom came up to me and she was like, he wants to speak. And so I was like, okay, like cool. And then they get up there and they speak, and he gets on the mic, and he's just like, I want to thank you for opening, having this opportunity for me to get up here and to speak, and offering this space and his hair was fixed, and his mom, was telling us too, like, this is the first time that he feels safe enough, to be in a space to wear his braids out and to be like proud of who he is. And so what he did is, like, he pulled out his braids and, like, he whipped them around, and it was powerful. And because he got up there and he had the mic, and just the difference that I seen in him from the first one compared to this one, you could tell that he was liberated.
Yeah.
And that he felt powerful.
Yeah.
And he had the voice. And I think that's the thing, is that it's not that we're voiceless, but we have to provide these spaces in order for us to exercise our voices. And so for him, he's just discovering his voice, and that he has the power to speak up and to be able to, say when something isn't right with him. But I think that's the experience for many of the people, many of the youth especially that we speak with, is that they don't necessarily feel like they're heard in the school system.
Yeah.
And so whenever they come here and they come to us, or they come to the town halls, they feel like they have that opportunity to be able to speak. And so for me, that was just seeing that one difference of having these 2 town halls, seeing the growth in this one person.
Yeah.
And then even like the previous speakers too, like there's people who came back to speak, and to see just that small little shift in the way that they thought, or the way that they talked, or, the way that they told their stories. Because each time they told their stories, the first time, it was a little shaky. The second time, you could tell that there's like more power in it. So for me, that's what this work is about helping people feel liberated and feel powerful, and feel, that they have a opportunity to change these systems. And so if all that I can do is just support somebody in that process, like that's enough for me.
Yeah. When you're saying that, like, I think of, like, they have a safe space, but then just now, like, thinking about that, like it's not even just about having a safe space, it's about understanding that this is our land. Like, and having that understanding of, like, you are exactly where you're supposed to be.
Right.
And one of the things that Nick mentioned the other day too was how racism isolates us, and how when we've been having these town halls for Rhapsody versus Racism, and allowing that safe space for people, like, we're no longer isolated. We're no longer, like, isolating ourselves in our own little worlds. Like, we're talking to each other, and we're creating solutions for ourselves, just by conversation and by connecting to each other. So I thought that was really powerful too.
It's why Landback is a liberation framework, right? So when we talk about Landback, it's the Red Power movement of our generation, right? It's about liberating the lives and land of our people. And like I was sick, I was busy that night, but whenever you were sharing that story, I could literally visualize that young person, and being somebody who has long hair my whole life, I related immediately to this young person's story. Whether it's how you're treated, when you play sports, and how you're looked at, or all these different things. And, to be able to wear those braids and be powerful, and for him to go from the place that he was at to where he's at now, like that's liberation. And I think that when we talk about what we're working towards, when we're trying to get land back and fight for our people, that's what we're talking about, is that liberation work,
It's just being supported. Feeling that support and standing together as a community. And you can see a huge shift in the community in the past few years, and just natives supporting natives and the community. It doesn't matter, white, black, native, doesn't matter. Just the community supporting the community is something real powerful, and it's really made it, like you said, made a big shift, and you can feel it. And now the powers are like, uh-oh.
Yeah, I think that's where, that's where this work becomes powerful, is that we've organized people and organized resources and organized, not only speaking truth to power, but be able to build new institutions that are led by our people, where our people have the say-so in our future of our lives. We're not just begging at the place at the white man's table. We're building up new institutions and new programs and new strategies that are buying for our people based on our understanding, based on our lived experience on our own homelands.
We're creating our own table.
There you go. There you go. Yep.
Exactly. And like even just what we're talking about now is just like such a small part of the work that we're doing. It's like every single day there's something new, but we're like reimagining like what it could be, and we've seen that through so many different things. You know, we have our town halls, but we had Creek Patrol, we had Camp Miniluzaha. We've had a lot of things going on, and it's all leading up to something. You know, it's all building on each other, and so I can't wait to see, you know, what's next.
There's one thing I want to touch base on before we wrap up. That's very NDN and Landback-esque. Is, you know, when we create our own institutions, when we create our own spaces like we're doing with the town hall, and for the, for the listeners too, we decided to create our own Rapid City versus Racism town hall, because what was beginning to happen over and over and over was that our people's voices were just constantly being silenced, whether they were down at City Hall, whether they're by the Rapid City Area School Board, or they always had some reason why you couldn't talk about this issue. Well, there was an HR thing, you can't talk about that. But that's what like white supremacy and racism does, right? They tell you, they try to set the dinner table of what you can and cannot talk about. And I think that like when you create your own dinner tables, when you create your own institutions, when you create your own places to speak truth to power, by nature of doing that, it upsets the status quo. It makes the actors in those institutions feel uncomfortable.
Right.
How have you guys seen that like play out, whether it be with the cops or the school boards or institutions here in the community?
That we can talk about, or no?
This is our table. We can talk about whatever we want to talk about.
Built this table.
Exactly.
We actually did build this table, so let's
Actually,
talk about
the
it.
guy down the street, but
I mean, there's so many different situations and things that have happened where we've seen people be very uncomfortable. Even just with the town halls of people expecting to have like personal invitations and feeling uncomfortable that they weren't invited to these things, and we're like,
so
this is for
interesting to see.
it's like this is for the people. This is not for you. I'm sorry, you know, this is for the people, and
It's really crazy because going back to when Rapid City versus Racism first, there's a lot of brainstorming to come up with that, and it actually was born with a lot of people thinking about how can we say this, you know. But when we first came out with the T-shirts, and so we was up at the boycott, and police officers came up and was trying to, you know, bark their orders like they normally do, and we stood our ground. Hey, you guys gave us this space, you know. This is the easement that you guys said we can be on. And we're following your law, so they couldn't do nothing about it. So at the same time, we offered the police officers some Rapid City versus Racism shirts, and they didn't know how to respond. There was one of them said, yeah, I'll put it on. And he actually put it on over his uniform. And he said, I'll support this round. And the other ones like refused to take it.
Yeah.
And those ones are the ones who are still to this day are giving us problems, are giving our community problems, harassing and trying to, you know, demand respect and act like we owe them something, you know, when they're supposed to protect and serve the entire community.
Yeah.
So that's just, you know, little examples of that.
Yeah. And I think even just the word racism makes people feel uncomfortable. So we're challenging people just even in that way. We're like taking up space, you know. We're being unapologetic about it, and I think that people are just not they're not used to it.
they're not ready for it.
No, and that's okay.
They better move over because
We better get ready.
They better be ready.
And also, like the T-shirt design, like it says, you know, Rapid City versus Racism, And then when, we ask people, we give the shirts, it makes them think. It's like, okay, like, which side are you on?
It's like an ultimatum. We said that from the get-go. It's like, this campaign is like drawing a line in the sand. You have you need to choose. Like, now is the time to choose.
Right.
So
like, check yourself. Like, where do you lie?
And that's a good place to wrap up this conversation, because the reality is, whether we're dealing with racism, systematic racism, white supremacy, and the efforts for Landback, they're bound up with one another, because the same exact systems, the court systems, the police state, the economic systems, the prison systems, the judicial systems, all of those systems were created for not only the purpose of stealing Indigenous people's lands, but to maintain and continue the theft of Indigenous people's lands.
right.
And those same exact systems that we're talking about are the same systems that are trying to keep us in jail, that are trying to keep our people in poverty, that are trying to keep our people from having higher education outcomes. And so these things are bound up with one another. And I think that throughout the Indigenous world, many Indigenous people in this movement are finding that to be true. And that's why when we say Landback, people are like, Landback, hell yeah. Because it means all that. It means all of that. Language back, culture back, our people back, our rights back, our liberation back. And so that's where, I would just want to commend all of you for all the work that you do here in the community. And for me, it's an honor to work side by side with you as we continue to do this work here and disrupt things, but also build things.
Right.
And that's what I love about what we do here at NDN Collective. So, we'll look forward to having you back on the show again and getting updates about the Rapid City versus Racism campaign and what's happening at these town halls, and I guess how we're shaking shit up here in Minnelusa. All right. All this going on, all this organizing going on, fighting racism, dismantling racism. There's a bunch of ways to take action. What are some of those ways that people can take action and get involved?
One of the ways is you can text rapid racism to 50302, and you'll get updates on the campaign, different ways to plug in. Like we'll be announcing, hey, there's a school board meeting next week. We'd love everyone to show up. We have talking points, different things like that.
Can we say that? Can you say that number again one more time?
Yeah. So it's texting rapid racism to 50302.
All right.
Yeah.
And town halls, there's a town hall going on. When is the next town hall?
Yeah, so for all our local people here in Rapid City, our next town hall will be on June 8th from 6 to 8 p.m. at O'ai Luta Okolakiche. And yeah, if you're in the area, come out. We want to focus this one around the youth. So making sure that we have space for our youth to be able to speak. It will be youth-ran, youth-led, youth-operated, and so if you're in the area, please come out to support any community members. Thank you.
And with this election coming up, we have an ability to potentially choose who our leaders are, and how we're interacting with racism. Hermus, what's your message on how we should be engaging or not engaging with these elections?
I think everybody should get out and vote. It's a chance to make our voice heard and get a place set at their table. And, that's where we're going to start building our people back up. So get out and vote get off your cheeks and get out and vote for the aunties.
All right. You heard it right here at the Landback for the People podcast. So you can text, you can attend the town hall meeting, and you can get off your cheeks and vote. So ways to take action here. It's honored to be a part of this movement as this community is waking up. Because I will say that I do feel that this community is waking up. I think the people in this room have something to do with that. I think this place has a big something to do with that. And so it's an honor to be a part of that. And those of you, in Indigenous communities all throughout North America who may be listening to this podcast, we know that there's many things happening in your communities, but you also are rising up in all the different ways that you are. And so we want to hear more about those stories. We want you to hear, we want to continue to speak truth to power. And anything that we're doing here is, can be done in your communities too. Mm-hmm. And we're an open book. We will share our successes and our failures and our ups and downs with any of you as you continue to rise up to both get your land back and fight racism. All right. Doksha ake wachi ankikte.
Doksha.
Landback.
Landback. Who's land? Who's land?
With our powers combined.
She should have got lotion. Pure ash sheets, Friday. So,
Can we get campaign rings?
RV. Shit.